In this lesson, we're going to learn vocabulary and idioms faster than we ever have in previous lessons. Let's dive in and begin at the amusement park. Joel brings the pandas to the amusement park today. He's in a good mood in a mischievous sort of way. He hopes to have fun by seeing the pandas get dizzy on one of the rides. First of all, Joel goes to the binoculars to try to pick a ride. There are two rides in the park that go around in circles. Those would be the carousel and the Ferris wheel. So both of these rides are round, and they're shaped like the letter O. Joel looks back and forth between these two rides quickly and asks himself, carousel or Ferris wheel? Carousel or Ferris wheel? But instead of saying or, Joel uses a new word, O. Carousel or Ferris wheel. The word O means or, and you might use it when choosing between two O-shaped rides. Now, to represent this word visually, one of the power lines has a tire on it instead of shoes. Remember that between some of the rides, the power lines make a Y shape for the word and. But here we have an O shape for the word or. These two words, I and O, are very simple conjunctions, and they're used in very similar ways. There's one more word that's used this way as well. Joel looks further to the right, and the long power line between the Ferris wheel and the water slide far to the right gives him an idea. Once in a while, the most adventurous guests in the park climb up the water slide, walk along the power line, and then hang from that power line by their knees. It would be very interesting to see the pandas do that. Joel asks the pandas, "Would you like to try hanging by your knees? It's lots of fun." The pandas look down at their legs. "We can't," they say sadly. "We don't have any knees." Joel investigates. Sure enough, these toy pandas can't bend their legs at all. "None of you have knees?" he asks, looking at them one by one. "Not even one of you?" Eventually he gives up. "Nope. Neither this panda, nor this one has any knees. Bummer." Now, in that monologue, it sounded like he said neither and nor a lot, but actually the word he uses is ni. The word ni serves as both neither and nor in Spanish. So what he says is, ni this panda, ni this one, ni this one. Now, even though modern English doesn't use the words neither and nor very much, Spanish uses ni very frequently. I mentioned earlier that I, o, and this new word, ni, are used very similarly. Joel looks up at the power lines, and he sees that there are knee guards hanging from the wire that runs from the Ferris wheel to the water slide. Apparently, the last person to hang from this line had an unfortunate accident, but his knee guards are still hanging there. So I, o, and ni are very similar in their uses. They're all conjunctions, so they can be used between entire phrases. But they are particularly special. They're often used between items in a list. For example, Joel might say, "Neither he nor she was around that time." To say this, he would say, "Ni he, ni she estaban that time." Let's learn two more conjunctions before we go to the rides themselves for prepositions. First of all, Joel continues to be indecisive of which ride to put the pandas on. But then a new thought occurs to him. He says, "Maybe I can get them dizzy without putting them on a ride. I just have to convince them to spin around in circles." And Joel knows exactly how to do this. He pulls out his magic wand and tells one of the pandas, "Here, we're going to decide which ride to take you on. Just hold this magic wand and start turning around in circles. We'll go to the ride it's pointing at when the wand lights up." So what he's thinking is that this selection method is like spinning a bottle or rolling dice. The idea is that they'll know which ride to take when the wand lights up. Now, to say when the wand rides up, Joel uses the word cuando. So it's cuando the wand rides up. This word has the stress on wand, cuando, and it means when. Joel's trick works very well. The panda spins around in circles, and when the magic wand lights up, it's pointing at the Ferris wheel. However, the panda is so dizzy that it staggers around and falls over. Joel laughs very loud and then remarks, "The wand lit up cuando it pointed at the Ferris wheel. That's where we're going to next." But Joel's laughter is rudely interrupted when he's knocked over by a pig, which proceeds to run into the binoculars. In Joel's fear and fury, he screams, "Why is there a pig in the amusement park?" A strange, inebriated-sounding voice shouts back, "Because we have to sell pork in our concessions." But to say this, the voice actually says, "Porque we have to sell pork." The word porque means because. So note that the stressed syllable sounds like pork, porque. Of course, Joel hates mammals, and he's furious that someone would try to justify their presence in an amusement park. But he can't see where the voice came from. He asks the pandas, "Where's the man who said that? He sounded drunk." One of the pandas looks through the binoculars to find out for Joel. Then he responds, "He's sobre the carousel." Joel is surprised. "Did you say he's sober?" "No," clarifies the panda. "He's drunk, but he's sobre the carousel." The word sobre means on top of or over. So the intoxicated man is on top of the carousel. Now, some English speakers confuse the word sobre with the word en, which are both at the carousel. But remember that en means at and can also mean in or on in certain contexts. If you want to say that something is on something, you'll only use en if it's the normal way of being on something. Meanwhile, sobre clearly means on top of, even in an unusual way. As an example, if you're sitting on a chair, that's simply en. You're sitting en the chair, because that's the normal way to be at a chair, or en the chair. If you're on a stage, that's also likely to be en, because that's the normal way to be at the stage. But if you're on top of a house or on top of a carousel, you probably won't use en. You're more likely to use sobre. Now Joel is excited to ride the Ferris wheel. He can't wait to see the pandas go around in circles and get dizzy again. But there is a complication. When Joel arrives at the Ferris wheel, the operator tells him, "You can't get on the Ferris wheel with those wings. I'm afraid you'll have to remove them." And they point at a basket where another insect's wings have been stashed. Joel is shocked by this. "I can't take my wings off. I could never be seen without my wings." His excuse is that he could never be seen without his wings. And his word for without is sin. So he says, "I could never be seen sin my wings." Joel asks the operator, "Can I please ride with my wings on?" The operator refuses, but then Joel asks again. When he asks this, something very strange happens. A big question mark falls out of Joel's mouth onto the ground. This sometimes happens when Joel talks, but not very often. His words actually turn into physical objects. Now, this intimidates the ride operator a bit, but then Joel asks again, and again. Meanwhile, the question marks keep falling on the ground. He keeps asking for so long that the operator finally lets him get on. Joel walks up the staircase that was created by his question marks and gets on the ride. The pandas ask him, "How did you get the operator to change his mind?" Joel is very pleased with himself and explains, "I just asked. That's how I get everything that I want. I just keep asking until success." Now, to say until success, Joel says hasta success. The word hasta roughly means until, and the stressed syllable sounds kind of like the word asked. So hasta success, until success. Remember that like all other prepositions, it should be followed by a noun. For example, until that day would be hasta that day. Next, we're going to look at some special phrases using the words that we've learned, but make sure that you have all of the words from today clearly in your head. We have o and ni on the power lines as conjunctions, cuando and porque in the middle. These are represented by the wand lying down on the path and the porque pig that ran into the binoculars. So these are also conjunctions. And then on top of the carousel, we had sobre as a preposition. And then at the Ferris wheel, we have sin for without and hasta for until. Now let's look at some idioms that use these words. There's a phrase, o sea. It's a combination of o, which means or, and sea, which is our subjunctive form of ser. On the surface, this seems to mean or it be, or something like that. This actually just is used to mean I mean, or in other words. In fact, you can use this to rephrase what you're saying without explicitly admitting that it was a mistake. So here's an example. It's my friends. I mean my brothers. So that would be es de mi friend, o sea, de mi brother.
Es de mi amigo, o sea, de mi hermano.
We keep seeing the subjunctive with the word cuando as well. For some reason, when you speak about a future event, you always use a subjunctive after cuando, as if to say, when that be the case. So in English, we just say, when that's the case. But Joel says, cuando that be the case. For example, when she's here would be when she be here, or cuando esté aquí. Now, if you change the sentence around and replace cuando with almost any other conjunction that we've learned, the mood changes back to the normal verb mood. It wouldn't be a subjunctive after that. This is basically just a weird thing that cuando does. So here's an example. We're going to do something when Valentina isn't around. We're going to rephrase that as, we're going to do something cuando Valentina not be around. We're going to do something cuando no esté Valentina.
Vamos a hacer algo cuando no esté Valentina.
Now let's look again at the word ni. We already know that ni means nor or neither, but it's also used in a weird little idiom for as soon as. So the idiom is ni bien. This doesn't seem to make sense when translated. Does it mean nor well? We just have to get used to it. So we'll use some sentence examples to get used to it. And today we'll use the example, as soon as that happens. That would be, ni bien eso happens. So here's a sentence example. As soon as that happens, I'll tell him this. That would be, ni bien eso happens, I'll tell this.
Ni bien eso pase, le diré esto.
So those are some quirky ways that o, ni, and cuando are used. O sea, cuando, and then subjunctive, and ni bien for as soon as. But let's look at a couple of idioms with today's prepositions as well. First of all, in order to say especially, as in especially here or especially with this type of thing, Joel generally just uses simple vocabulary and says, above all. So use the phrase sobre todo, which literally means above all. Here's an example. Above all with this type of things. That would be sobre todo con this type de things.
Sobre todo con este tipo de cosas.
Now for the word hasta, or until. Usually, until refers to time, and it's used to say until some event. For example, until yesterday. Now, since it's a preposition, it always gets a noun after it. So until that day would be hasta that day. Here's an example. So I was with Ignacio until that day. That would be So estaba con Ignacio hasta that day.
Entonces estaba con Ignacio hasta ese día.
So in that case, hasta was followed directly by a noun because it is a preposition. But what if we wanted to say, until you are here? Is you are here a noun? Well, no. So how can we put the preposition hasta before that phrase? In this case, we have to use the idiom hasta que. That's a combination of a preposition and a conjunction. One way to think about this is remember that phrases that start with que are often exchangeable with nouns. So that's really what's happening here. You could say hasta that day, which is clearly a preposition and then a noun. Or you could say hasta que estaba aquí, in which case hasta is followed by a phrase that starts with que. If you were able to follow all of that and understood that, you can pat yourself on the back, but we're not quite done. It gets a little more complicated. The phrase hasta que is a lot like the word cuando. If you're referring to something in the future, then the phrase after the que has to be subjunctive. For example, until you're here wouldn't be hasta que estás aquí. Instead, it would be hasta que estés aquí. Now, if everything that I've said in the last minute is too complicated for you, then don't worry about it too much. You can review this later, and it will come up in examples. For now, I would recommend just learning one sentence example and practicing it a bit until you get used to it. So here's a sentence that you can understand in its entirety. I will be with Jose until you're here. We would phrase this as, I will be with Jose until that you be here, or estaré con José hasta que estés aquí. Feel free just to practice that one sentence example, estaré con José hasta que estés aquí. And then you really know everything you need to know about the word hasta for now. But you also want to make sure that you know all the vocabulary from this video by heart. If you have a moment, I recommend getting out a piece of paper and making sure you can write down all your conjunctions and prepositions before going on to the next video.